Local acquisition and broadcast of Quilting in the Heartland on KCTS 9 is made possible by In the Beginning Fabrics, featuring all quilting needs and regular quilting classes for beginners and experts, located in Seattle and Bellevue.
Welcome to Quilting from the Heartland. I'm Charlene Jorgensen, and today we're going to work with a design familiar to quilters everywhere, the log cabin. If you're a beginner at quilting, this certainly would be an appropriate design to work with because it is all straight seams, and you won't have to worry about the bias, edges, and triangles in a design. The advanced quilter also likes to work with this design because there are a multitude of arrangements that you can do with the block. And when you look at the example that I have, the first example I have to share with you, you'll see what I mean. I first designed this quilt on the computer before I cut all of the fabrics. When you look at a single block in the log cabin, there is a visual light and dark part to each block. One side made up of the darker fabrics and the other one made up of the lighter fabrics. And when you think about it in that way, most traditional quilts are made with that particular block, with half-square triangles. And you start flip-flopping those blocks around, and you will have a multitude of arrangements to pick from. And that's exactly what I did with this one. I started out with a star in the center of the quilt, and I used 3 combinations of fabric when I was working with this quilt. Starting in the center, half of each block has green and red, and then from there I went out and used a red on one half and a ivory on the other. And then I maintained that same light fabric in another block using the dark green on one half and the light ivory on the other. Also, when you've been looking at this quilt, you have seen little stars in the corners of all the blocks. That is something that was added to the log cabin block. If you're a beginner, you can eliminate that particular round and you won't have to worry about the bias edge in the stars. You can do the same design that I have made here, just eliminate the stars in the corners. The fabrics that I used in this quilt were all plaids and stripes. I wanted the feeling of this quilt to be a very warm and cozy feeling. I did not want it to be bright and cheery. I wanted it to be an antique-looking quilt. Then I bordered the outside edge of this quilt with a dark green, and the quilting design that I used in it has a diamond in it to complement the stars in the corner of each of the blocks. And then each corner in the quilt ties the cable together of the diamonds with a heart for a nice ending to the quilt. Like I said, there are a multitude of things that you can do with this design just by flip-flopping the block. And the next quilt that I'm going to show you was made by my daughter, Christy. It happened to be her first quilt, and she did not use the stars in the corner like I said you could leave off. She has just 4 rounds in each of the log cabin blocks, and she has arranged them in a different way than I did, and it almost appears as if they are diamonds in this quilt instead of log cabin blocks when you look at the quilt in a full-out view. So, like I said, there are many different things that you can do with this, and if you want to play with the design, let me show you what you can do if you don't have a computer to do your designing with. If you cut squares of cardboard into 2-inch squares and make a line on the diagonal through that square and color half of it dark and leave the other one light and start flip-flopping those blocks around, you can create your own quilt in that simple way, just by arranging the cardboards to make the design that you want. Like I said, I had the opportunity to print out the design from the computer before I actually started with it. And there was one simple change that I made in the very center, and when you looked at the quilt on the wall, you saw that the center had a dark area in it. Otherwise, I stayed with the rest of the design like I designed it. Well, today we're going to work with pattern shapes to follow when we're cutting, so that we will know that we have the precise size to all of the logs in our quilt. And let me show you an example of what happens when you don't have all of your logs cut to the exact length. I got permission from my daughter Angie to show this quilt before I did the program. This is a quilt that she made in home ec in about 7th grade. And all of these logs were cut, or strips